Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Kyra and today we are going to talk about and review the ABH Norvina Volume 1 Pressed Pigment Palette. And I want to start this video off by saying that this video is not in any way to encourage you to go out and purchase this palette. I will link it below for you, but this video is just so that you can see this palette in action through the creativity of my 8 looks that I created with this palette, and or if you just want to hang out with me and watch me put some eyeshadow on my eyeballs. Originally, this video was going to be a 10 looks 1 palette, but I'm really suffering with my allergies. I will put a really ugly picture up right now to show you what I'm talking about. But every morning I'm waking up with my eyes almost completely swollen shut. And this happened sort of in the midst of the filming process for the 10 looks 1 palette. So even though there are 2 shades left in the palette that I have not used, and I will show you which ones they are, I have decided to just cut it off at 8, including the one that I'm wearing today, because my eyes are so sensitive, specifically to the removers and things that I use, and they are very gentle, but my eyes are just, they've had enough. So before we get into the looks, I'm going to go ahead and swatch all of these shadows for you, just again so you can see them in action, see how they fare in swatches. As always, swatches are only part of the story. A lot of times eyeshadows can perform completely differently on the eyes than they do on the arm. Surprising? I think not. With all of that said, let's do some swatches. One coming at you, starting off with this look and every other look using the new ABH eyeshadow primer, applying it with a finger and then really pressing it in with a sponge. Very exciting. First going in with E3, which is a yellow ochre shade, or as I would like to call it, a mustard shade. And I'm just applying this mostly to the outer crease of the eye. Now going in with D1, which is a primary yellow shade, and just bringing that into the front part of the crease, as well as blending out the first shade on the outer part of the crease. Going into A4, which is a golden copper shade, putting this on the outer part of the lid, and this is going to be the depth for this look. Next, going into C2, which is a metallic yellow gold. I would actually call this a metallic yellow in my opinion, but nobody asked me. And of course, we've got a jam as we go along. And just building this up to its full metallic yumminess. Next, going into E5, which is a matte Oxblood. I hate that name, that shade description, but I'm going to use this today for sort of a faux liner, and I actually really ended up liking how this turned out. And then I'm also smudging that same shade under the eye. Next, going into my at March Beauty Word highlighter from Ofra, I'm using the shade Star Island for the inner corner. Get ready for it. Here it is. This is the look in studio lighting, and I love how this came out with the faux liner. And this is the look in natural lighting. I always like to do these pictures for you guys as well, and I hope that you enjoyed the first look. All right, guys, starting off look 2 with the shade B1, which is a matte vivid lilac. This shade and all of the purple shades blend beautifully. Next, going into C4, which is a matte mauve plum shade. And I'm just using this to start to deepen up the crease, specifically on the outer half of the crease, also smudging the same shade on the lower lash line. Next, going into D2, which is a shimmering blue purple, building this up in the center of the lid, kind of like a halo eye, though I don't know that I've completely mastered the application. Back to the shade B1, I'm just patting this over the edges of the last shade just to try and get a seamless blend. Going into A1, which is definitely a favorite. This is a metallic lilac with a cool pink shift. I'm putting this on the center of the blue shade just for a little more dimension. And then going back to the darker shade we put in the crease, I'm using this as well on either side of the blue for a blend. Then going back into A1, we're going to put this on the inner corner and pull it up a little bit toward the crease, as I like to do. Get ready for it. Here is the look in studio lighting. I love how this turned out, and I went really simple on the lips to let this bold eye shine. And here is the look in natural lighting. Definitely a favorite of the 8 looks that I did. Let's get on to look. All right, starting off look 3 with the shade E2, which is considered a matte pastel orange. I'm just building this up in my transition area, really diffusing it first, and then moving in with a denser brush, as you see here, building it up on the outer V and in the crease for full opacity. Moving into C5, which is a matte burnt sienna brown, putting this on the outer V of the lid and a little bit up into the crease, and this is going to be the depth for this look. Going back into E2, which is that matte pastel orange, just making sure we have a seamless blend and that orange is really showing up with the brown. Next, legitimately one of the shades I bought the palette for, which is E1, which is a shimmering peach gold. And I'm just building this up on the entire lid and going in with the phalange for a real depth of color. Back to the shade C5, which is that brown shade, which we're going to put on the lower lash line. And then C1, which is a matte bright white, and is it ever bright? I love this as an inner corner highlight. Get ready for it. I'm being weird. And here's the look in studio lighting. I finished off with the Fenty Gloss Bomb, and here is the look in natural lighting. I love this soft, warm, summery look that I created, and I hope you did too. Going into look 4, my girl Anya Stamper picked these shades for me. Thanks, Anya. First, going into A3, which is a matte rich plum shade. I'm concentrating this on the outer crease and a little bit on the outer part of the lid, and just building it up to quite some depth. Then going in with a matte, vibrant, warm candy pink, which is A5, and I'm bringing that into the front part of the crease and building it up, and then meeting it up with our first shade A3, which we're going back into now to go ahead and blend with that beautiful hot pink. Next, going into C3, which is a metallic deep rose gold with gold sparkles, and I'm applying that with the good old phalange on the center of the lid. Very pretty. Going into the shade B3, which is called a metallic rose with gold sparkles. I highly recommend you use a glitter glue with this shade because it is quite flaky, but the metallic payoff is gorgeous. Going back into our first shade, which is A3, that deep Plum shade, and I'm putting that on the lower lash line. And then I'm also putting that shade B3 on the front part of the lash line. Then going back in with A1, not back in, but into A1, which is that lilac shade for the inner corner, and then adding the matte bright white, which is C1 on the brow bone. Here comes some weirdness. And here is the fourth look in studio lighting. Thank you so much, Anya, for the color choices. And here is that look in natural lighting. Definitely bright, definitely bold, definitely beautiful, and let's get into look 5. All right, y'all, we're halfway there, starting off with E3 in the transition. I thought I'd try and do a neutral look with this palette, and we'll see if it works out. Going into E5, which is that Oxblood shade again, and using this in the crease for some depth and blending it into that first yellow ochre shade. Now we're getting brave, going into D5, which is the matte black. I'm going to put this all over the lid. I'm building it up to its full opacity here, and then I'm going to go in with a teeny tiny tapered blending brush, as you see here, and start working it up to meet the crease. Then going back into E5, which is that Oxblood shade we used in the crease, and blending that in the crease to meet up with the black. And now going into B2, which is a metallic rosy bronze with gold sparkles. It looks like brown to me. And I'm putting that over the outer 2/3 of the lid. Now going to A4, which is a metallic golden copper, and that's going to go on the inner third of the lid, third to half, you know. And to me, this is like an old gold shade minus the green. Going back to E3, which is our yellow ochre transition shade, and just making sure that everything is blended seamlessly and we have a nice gradient. Going back to B2, I'm going to take this on the lower lash line with a pencil brush. And finally going into C1, which is the matte bright white for the inner corner. I cannot believe how brightening that shade is. Get ready for it. There we go. This is the look in studio lighting. I think it turned out pretty neutral. And here is the look in natural lighting, and I did finish off this look with the Bite Beauty lipstick in Rhubarb. Spoiler alert, this is my favorite look. Going into B1, which is a matte vivid lilac, and I'm just diffusing this very softly into the transition. Then going into A2, which is a mid-tone vivid lilac, and I'm working this into the crease and to the outer V. Going back to B1, and I'm hiding for some odd reason, we're going to blend out that second shade and make sure we have a really beautiful gradient. Next is B5, which is a deep, cool plum shade, and I'm placing this on the outer third of the lid and a little bit up into the crease, also blending it out under the eye. Back to A2, which is that vivid lilac mid-tone, and into A1, which is the metallic lilac with a cool pink shift. And I'm putting this all over the lid, really building it up, and then going into C2, which is the metallic yellow gold. I'm placing this on the inner corner for a little pop and contrast with the purple. And here is the look in studio lighting. I love it. And here is the look in natural lighting. I finished off the lips with the Kat Von D lipstick in K-Dub. And again, this is my fave. Starting off look 7 with the shade D4, which is a matte primary blue with blue sparkles. I didn't feel like the sparkles showed up on the eye at all, but I am putting this in the outer V as well as the outer crease. Next, going into D1, which is the primary yellow, building it up in the front of the crease first, and then using it to blend out the tippy top of the blue on the outer crease. Next, going into D2, which is a shimmering blue purple, and I am putting that on the middle of the lid, building it up until it is as opaque as I like. And then going into C2, which is our metallic yellow gold, using that on the inner third to half of the lid. Again, building this up and definitely using, going back into D2, which is our shimmering blue purple, and putting that on the entire lower lash line. And then finishing off the look with C1, which is the matte bright white on the inner corner, and this is probably my least favorite look, but I still like how it turned out overall. Here's the look in natural lighting. I forgot to film it in studio. Alright, starting off the final look with C4, which is a matte mauve plum, and I'm just buffing this into the crease, trying to diffuse it as much as. And then going into the crease with the shade B4, which is a deep, cool violet shade. I really like this shade, and I love it in the contrast with the warmer plum shade. Going back into that plum shade, C4, I'm going to buff out what we just did in the crease with that violet shade, and then taking a clean brush, making sure that everything is nice and soft and diffused. Going back into B4, which is that deep violet, and just placing some more of it on the outer V or the outer third of the lid. And then I'm taking A4, which is metallic golden copper, on the entire inner 2/3 of the lid, really packing this on for its full metallic capabilities. And then going back into B4, I'm going to smudge this on the lower lash line. And then going into A1, first chef's kiss of the video, might I add. And I'm putting this on the inner corner and dragging it up into the crease. And then finishing off the look with C1, that matte bright white. Get ready for it. This is the look in natural lighting. Again, I forgot to shoot footage in studio lighting, but natural light is better anyway.
This palette, in my experience with other ABH palettes, and I do have 6 of them, this is a completely different formula. These shadows are not as soft. You will experience some kick up in the pan on the mattes and some of the chunkier glitter shades here, but overall I think that this is a very different formula from the 14 pan palettes, and I think that's good. I actually think that this formula is an improvement upon the formula in the 14 pan palettes. I like the 14 pan palettes, but these are pressed pigments, so they are even more pigmented, even more vibrant than the 14 pan palettes. I found that the longevity of the shadows was very, very good. I personally don't experience any problems with longevity with the 14 pan palettes, and that remained even more so true with this palette. I did, however, experience some staining with some of the shades. I said before that there are 2 shades that I didn't use. That was this one, which is D3, and this one, which is E4. However, this shade up here, this hot pink, and some of the purples did leave a slight staining on my eyes at the end of the day. For me, I don't have an issue with staining. I generally will cancel out discoloration on my lid with my concealer when I am concealing under the eyes, so that's not an issue. But I do realize that staining is an issue for some people who have a sensitivity to certain pigments. So if you found sensitivity with any of the 14 pan palettes, certain shades, purples, reds, etc., I actually would recommend that you stay away from this palette, because I think you would find this even more irritating because the pigmentation level is so high. Let's talk about the ease of use. I actually found that this formula, both the shimmers and the mattes, were for me easier to use than the 14 pan palettes. I find with the 14 pan palettes, while I can get there, it takes a lot longer. I blend till my fingers fall off, and I love the result, but I don't always have time for that. With this palette, I actually found that the mattes practically blended themselves. The shimmers I did find extremely easy to work with. I do recommend, like I pointed out earlier,
this thing is a pain in the ass to open. I wish there was like a little divot or something right here where you could get in and lift it up without having to use your nails to do so.
But there are like 3 shimmer shades, this, and this one, that are a little bit more chunky or flaky, which is consistent with some of the shimmers in the 14 pan palettes. So I actually recommend, if you're going to use those shades, I found the easiest way to get them to lay down with a minimal fallout was actually to use a glitter glue, and I do use the NYX glitter primer with almost all of my shimmers, and I really felt like, especially these chunkier shades right here, I didn't feel like they performed very well with a setting spray. I felt like when I went in with my wet shadow brush that it almost like picked up the product as you were trying to layer it up to full opacity and, you know, its metallic finish. So that may or may not be a con to you if you prefer to apply your shimmers that way. But for me, it was fine because, like I said, I prefer to apply my shimmers and whatnot over a sticky base. One huge pro to this palette, in my opinion, is that there is both a black and a white. And that is because you can either deepen up a look or a shade by mixing it with the black, and the same for the white. You can mix it or layer it or what have you to make your shades lighter, and overall I think that makes the palette much more versatile. I know some people will express the school of thought that they don't need a black in every palette, and I understand that. I don't need a black in every palette either, but if you want this to be a standalone palette, I do think it is handy to have both a black and a white because you can just do anything with those colors. Lastly, I wanted to mention my favorite and my least favorite shades. I have to say that my least favorite shade is this one right here, which is C3. C3, I don't know, I just feel like it doesn't go with this palette. It just, I mean, it's kind of a pinky red, like cranberry shimmer. I did use it several times. I just don't feel like it adds to the palette or makes this palette more cohesive. So if I have to pick a shade that I don't love, it is that one. And then in terms of favorite shades, I have a bunch, but I'll minimize it to 2 or 3. This one, A1, I love this soft lavender shimmer. It is very, very pretty. It's a good inner corner highlight for just about any look that you could make with this palette. And then surprisingly, I love this white. When you swatch it, it's very much a matte white, but as you can see on my inner corner today, it is really brightening, almost to the point of looking like it has a sheen to it, but it's just a beautifully finely milled white and one of the best ones I've ever used. And then another shade that I've been craving in my collection that I don't have a lot of is a peach like this. I would love to just pair these two together and maybe the white on the inner corner, but I've been really craving peach for whatever reason lately, specifically peach shimmers, and so I really, really enjoyed the look that I did with this peach all over the lid. So those are the facts as I see them. I love this palette. I'm really glad that I added it to my collection. I'm not in any way, shape, or form recommending that you go out and purchase this palette. I think that this is a lot of money for a very specific color story, and unless this is a color story that you feel like you're going to be using all the time, like super regularly, I don't know that it's worth the value for money. There's a lot of shadow in here. This is not going to be for everybody. If you don't like super pigmented, bright looks, this is not the palette for you. If you predominantly do neutral looks, this is definitely not the palette for you. In my eyes, there are very few neutral looks that you can get out of this palette. I did do one in the 8 looks, but beyond that, I think you would be really limited in terms of producing neutral looks from this palette. So that's it. I wanted to give you the information and not my opinions. Like I said, I love this palette. I'm glad that I added it to my collection, but whether you add it to your collection is up to you. I hope you guys enjoyed this 8 looks 1 palette. My eyes certainly didn't thank me for this video, but I had a lot of fun doing it for you guys, and I really appreciate you spending probably a larger chunk of your day with me than usual. And with all of that said, I hope all of your makeup days are absolutely beautiful, brilliant makeup days, and I will see you in my next video soon.